Hi, I'm Jen, the Oregon Trail Gen X nerd, and welcome to this interview series where I'm connecting with some of the ordinary people who are attempting to do something extraordinary to get a movie uncanceled. It's already an extraordinary situation. Actor Adam Driver revealed that he had recruited past collaborator Steven Soderbergh, legendary director, and Soderbergh's team to develop a cool and cost effective Ben Solo story for Lucasfilm. It was titled The Hunt for Ben Solo. Apparently, the script passed through every level of checks for canon and began pre production. And then Disney CEO Bob Iger canceled it, which has never happened before. So, Star Wars fans who are heartbroken and who would otherwise throw their hard earned dollars and time into licensed Ben Solo merch and movie tickets are spending them lobbying Disney to greenlight the film again. My next guest, Yeet, is a passionate social media booster and admin of the Tumblr community for the campaign to save the hunt for Ben Solo. Helping Star Wars fans across the internet is a key component of sending a clear signal that fans have dollars and time to invest in the franchise if Disney would only assess the market. So, Yeet, thank you so much for speaking with me today. Tell us, where did your Star Wars fandom begin?
Well, firstly, thank you for having me. I've grown up with Star Wars for my entire life, with my earliest memory doing the Jedi Academy event at Hollywood Studios in Disney World, Orlando, when I was about 4 or 5 years old. I grew up watching the original and prequel trilogies religiously. I loved Revenge of the Sith especially. To me, that was the best story ever told in Star Wars, that I'd ever experienced at that time. It shaped a lot of my understanding and beliefs around good and evil, morals, how government works, how governments fail, how tyranny comes to power, how heroes can fall to villainy, how the past is never as perfect as we make it out to be. It was the collapse of an entire civilization that had existed for 2,000 years into authoritarianism, and it fascinated me.
So it sounds like you were originally a fan of the prequels. Tell us where the sequels fit into your fandom.
So for a good long while, I was kind of starved for Star Wars content. I didn't really have a lot of access to some of the extended universe media or the Clone Wars series, started by George Lucas and Dave Filoni. So when the sequel trilogy came out, I was extremely excited when I saw the trailer for The Force Awakens. I was like, "Oh my God, Star Wars is about to come back!" And I saw the chance for more storytelling as grand in scope and deep as the prequels in the original trilogy, and I was frankly given it with the first movie in the trilogy. And to be clear, I was extremely enamored, mostly with Kylo Ren. I thought he was fascinating, how he admired Vader, his true identity as Ben Solo. His very strong and clear inner conflict from day one that separated him from Vader, and his fascination with Rey, as well as how much he struggled to live up to extremely different but equally unachievable expectations placed upon him by both Snoke and by his own family. And I related to it because I have Asperger's and ADHD. I grew up a gifted kid in gifted programs in school, with some behavioral issues, and I saw a lot of myself in him. And I wanted to see him be redeemed, even after killing Han. And I wanted to, especially to see him survive, unlike Vader. I wanted to see how he struggled with living with those mistakes. Um, of course, then The Last Jedi came out, and my opinions began to sour. I'd say it was because of subverted expectations, but really it was also because I had not been introduced to non-linear character arcs yet. This was about like several years before I first watched Avatar: The Last Airbender, and saw Zuko's arc for the first time, which really introduced me to the concept that redemption isn't a clear one-way track. You can relapse and have it's a constant struggle to finally get to that goal. Um, and seeing Kylo go from saving Rey to doubling down on the dark side, was something I just couldn't understand at the time. But in hindsight, um, I still have some issues with the movie. The movie's quality wasn't impacted by that. I really enjoy it now, but back then it sent me down a very strong rabbit hole of sequel hate. I usually kept it to myself because I wasn't really online a lot. But in some conversations with friends who were fellow fans, and we usually keep it respectful, even though we disagreed at the time. I was very dissatisfied with the sequels after The Last Jedi, and especially when The Rise of Skywalker came out and sort of validated a lot of fears that I had towards the sequels at the time.
You know what, Yeet? Thanks so much for sharing that because sometimes I feel a little bit alone because The Last Jedi actually isn't my favorite of the sequel films either. For some of the reasons that you identified, that it's confusing in the way that Kylo Ren doubles down on the dark side. I also found that some of the moments that seemed to be intended to be serious didn't come across as serious as I would have liked them to have been shown. And that's just, the director's style and the way the writers chose to approach it. So
Mhm.
like you, it's not my favorite. So Yeet, I have shared that I don't happen to be a Raylo, but you found your way to appreciating the Raylo story. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, so after The Last Jedi, well, that was the film that kind of like made people understand that Raylo was definitely in the cards for the story, and it fascinated me. For those not in the know, Raylo is the ship the between Ben Solo, Kylo Ren, and Rey, uh, which was already a thing by The Force Awakens as a concept, because they did drop hints even then. But it exploded after The Last Jedi, which gave us a lot more material, made it much more likely to be canon, and made it a lot more interesting and dynamic than a lot of people I think were expecting. And that actually helped me a lot to come to terms with the movie, because it gave me something to look forward to. I strongly believe that Ben and Ray's story was the through line of all the movies in a way that is the thing lynch pinching them into feeling like a trilogy, even if a lot of other parts of it feel like they come into contradiction or feel like a mess, because there's something really emotionally powerful about these two people with fundamentally different experiences, fundamentally different outlooks coming to have this change in perspective of one another that makes them better people. With Ray, it shifts from her seeing the galaxy in black and white and her almost feeling like it's a break from the naivete of the world that she had despite her struggles that very clearly jaded her to the world. It was her understanding that not everyone that did bad things were necessarily inherently evil. And it was that awakening as well in Kylo, where for the first time in his life, someone who had very clearly seen all the bad stuff he did, who had actively hated him in the past, was starting to see him as something more than that. It was the ultimate counter to what Snoke had been putting in his head, what Palpatine had been feeding him since he was a baby in the womb. Like, that you are fundamentally wrong. You don't belong with your family. You don't belong in the light. You have to be this. You have to be this monster in a mask. You have to be this miserable wretch of a creature only to serve me, only to serve my interests, and only to bring misery and suffering to those people that oppose me. And Ray was Ray is the catalyst for Kylo to start coming into his own and start viewing himself as a person with agency again, which he really lacked beforehand. Even when he killed Han, he genuinely seemed like it destroyed him. And The Last Jedi confirmed that it was less of his own agency and more of Snoke's. And with that, making me want to see more of them, wanting to see them have a happy ending. It also made me start to appreciate the sequel story a lot more because I was starting to ask questions about if he got to atone and if he got to live, what the consequences would be of that. Would he be a wandering Ronin, righting the wrongs of the First Order? Would he be made an indentured servant of the new government, forced to forced by them to fix his mistakes, but also desperately trying to prove he has changed to be allowed the freedom and forgiveness that he craves in order to be with Rey? Would he become a teacher who helps Rey rebuild the Jedi Order to avoid the pitfalls the past orders fell into with their dogmas about emotion and attachment? I didn't know, and that was fascinating. And at the time, after the Rise of Skywalker, what really hurt and made me really sour on the sequels until fairly recently was that we might never know that. It was supposed to be Ben dies, and that's the end.
So, Yeet, tell us about your YouTube channel. What can folks find there?
Okay, so to start with, it was made when I was around 13, and so a lot of early videos are kind of just me as a teenager throwing anything at the wall and seeing what sticks. And some of it is a bit embarrassing for me from my perspective, but I left it up there partially because of nostalgia, but also to just own it. Like I did that. I was embarrassing as a kid. Moving on. And then later on, I started trying to delve into reaction content, which that had some of my best videos, but in terms of engagement, but they weren't really, um, they didn't feel like what I wanted to do, and I kind of just fell into a rut. So I just lately have just been posting really rarely, usually about something that I felt was worth making a video about, but not enough to make videos consistently. Then the news came out, then the interview happened, and needless to say, I joined the campaign, and now I've got several videos planned and ready to film very soon after this interview.
So, I happen to notice that you are a brave person because you are singing in one of your most recent videos. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so theater kid, I kind of had any concept of shame when it came to performing beaten out of me as a young kid. Not literally beaten, but you know what I mean. So my first and only video for the campaign as of right now that I've released was a cover of Dead Mom from Beetlejuice the musical. Weird place to pick a song to cover for a campaign about an entirely separate fandom and franchise on an entirely different character. But I rewrote it from the perspective of Ben after being revived because Carrie Fisher died between The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker, and I really doubt after the Rise of Skywalker, they're going to her family's going to allow her image to be used again in Star Wars, in the manner that she was after her passing and after her posthumous role in the Rise of Skywalker. So, with that knowledge, if this movie ever gets made, Leia is likely going to be a very minimal part of it. I took that from the perspective of Ben, who, if he is going to be revived in this movie, if he is going to face the galaxy, he's now going to do so without his mom, possibly for the first time. He's going to have to grapple with the fact that his mom is not going to be there to help him and believe in him. And I thought that was fascinating. So I made the song about it. I made the song about how Ben might feel of the frustration, the longing, the sorrow that comes from that person who shaped so much of who you are and who believed in you, even during times when you didn't believe in yourself, now being gone and you having to just live with that. Um, I thought that would really grab the attention of people to the movement, but also to just demonstrate the potential for character development and the story this movie could tell. Because Steven Soderbergh is a director who likes to focus on character. His movies are extremely personal when it comes to their protagonists and the people within them.
Yeet, you hinted that you're working on a number of other videos. Can we have some hints about what we can expect?
Well, I'll tell you that the project I'll be working on very soon is a three-part fan testimonial going deeper into my experiences as a Star Wars fan, being a sequel hater, becoming a fan of Reylo, and joining the campaign. Stuff I've already talked to you about earlier in this video, in this interview. But I also have in the works videos to analyze different ways this movie could work, different avenues it could take. I especially would love to talk about something a lot of people don't really consider, which is Star Wars' impact on not just culture, but on the belief system and moralities of the kids who watch it, and how this movie is really important, especially in the modern day, for teaching children about both redemption, but also how people can fall into these pipelines towards authoritarianism and fascism, especially when they're young and vulnerable, like Ben was, and how they can break out of that and then have to live with having been in those pipelines, to rebuild your entire worldview away from this very toxic, very damaging environment where might makes right and personal relationship and vulnerability with other people is frowned upon or even punished, much like how Ben was when he was Kylo, and Snoke would just, for even being sad that his dad died at his own hand, nonetheless. I think that's fascinating. I think it's worth talking about in terms of why this movie should be made.
Absolutely. And I want to reinforce, your ideas about these videos that you're planning to make with, other commentary that I've seen in written form on topics like masculinity and deconstructing what it means for young men these days to feel like they're behaving appropriately. And it can lead to some of the really uh, stiff and emotionless and um, uh, isolating kind of behavior that you were describing. So I'll look forward to seeing those. So, what drew you to come online and find a community that was working on saving the hunt for Ben Solo?
So one of my classes right now is protest in American politics. So this felt like a good way to get some early practice utilizing what I learned there. But it was a lot more than that. It was that I'd always wanted Ben to come back even after the Rise of Skywalker immediately. And it wasn't just because of him obviously being my favorite sequel character, but because of what he represented. George Lucas once said that Star Wars is meant to teach 12-year-olds and younger children early lessons on morality and how, ironically, I guess politics, how governments work, and how uh, the importance of what makes good governing and how people should treat one another. And for Ben, he always was made to represent the troubled youth of the next generation, of the current generation, that has been suffering all of these consequences of the actions of the previous generation, for better or worse. They face heavy expectations from everyone who came before them. The legacy of the people that came before them is constantly shadowing them, and that pressure can break people, especially in the modern day where we have all these different groups of people that are constantly trying to break from their parents, and are just crushed with this sense of obligation, but also this sense of like hopelessness that they're never going to be able to have that sense of self-agency. And with Ben, the movies don't really get into this that much, but the comics show his fall was from a consistent set of failures from his families, from his peers, to himself, just to recognize that something was wrong with his life, with how he was being raised, and this fear of him becoming like Vader, this fear of returning to that negative legacy that shadowed his family ever since it came out that Leia was the daughter of Vader. Um, it affected Ben the worst out of anyone because everyone could tell that he had so much of his grandfather in him, much like Luke, and no one understood how to help him because they were also too scared to acknowledge it properly. And to have his story end with him dying after redeeming himself, after saving Rey, with no hope for a life after that, it left a really bad, like ashy taste in my mouth. And I spent the next 4 years thinking about why. Why did this specific character dying in the manner that he did for a redemption affect me in this way? Because it's happened before with Vader, it's happened in other franchises and stories with great effect, but it never left me feeling this bitter. And recently, I think I realized it's because it gives the message that that is the end of a troubled youth after they've changed themselves into a better person. It gives this message that once you mature, the only thing you are good for is serving the people that you've hurt, and outside of that, you're essentially meaningless. Once your purpose of helping and fixing the problems you've caused is done, then that's it. That's all you're really good for, which doesn't fit with the morals of Star Wars, and it doesn't fit with the real world at all. These are still people. They want to have a family, they want to have friends, they have hobbies. Your life doesn't just stop after you have tried to make yourself a better version of yourself. And that's not what troubled children who see themselves in Ben should have learned as their last lesson with the character, uh especially seeing how in those last moments he was happy only for it to be just ripped from him. It was disturbing.
Agree with you very much. It's a troubling message to send to someone that the only way you can redeem yourself after having done something terrible is to end. That's a scary, honestly, thing to be telling young people, in my opinion, given that I have worked with young people in the past, and definitely not what I would want them to take away. So let's talk about what your thoughts were when you read the Associated Press article in which Adam Driver revealed the hunt for Ben Solo.
Yeah. So when I saw the news about the interview, first things first, I went sort of like this. What? No, no, we were on the verge of greatness. We were this close. And I had this fire just light up inside of me again. Like I hadn't felt it in forever, that feeling of like genuine upset anger over someone being done dirty, over this character being done dirty, and over the fandom being done dirty. Because I know I've been on AO3. I know how much people wanted Ben to come back. Even 5 years since that movie came out. Um, so when that interview came out and I saw that Adam had been working with Steven Soderbergh and Scott Z. Burns for so long to try and bring this character back, and for it to come so far only for the top people at Disney with Bob Iger and Alan Bergman to shut it down, like that old part of me that I felt had died with after The Rise of Skywalker returned. And I took to Tumblr. I started looking for posts, wondering if people felt the same. And then I saw the article about the plane, and I stopped being solely angry and I became excited because holy, I am not alone in this feeling. And there are other people, some of whom have been fans so much longer than me when it came to the sequels, all coming out of the woodworks after almost half a decade now. And it was really rewarding.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that because I had almost the exact same response. I don't think I shouted out loud, but there was definitely a mental explosion, a lot of serious sadness. And it was also the airplane actually going over Disney that made me say, oh, there are other people having the same feeling. Let me go find where they are. I went to Blue Sky rather than Tumblr, but same idea, right? Where are my people at? And is there something that we want to talk about? Because clearly there were people who were willing to do something and even throw dollars behind demonstrating to Disney that the fan base of Star Wars was not going to take this sitting down. And I think that's really funny because there's probably about a 20-year age gap between the two of us, and yet the reaction that we had was the same. So you went on Tumblr. What did you find?
Uh, I found a lot of people, but no community, at least no official community. Um, that was actually one of the first things I looked for. And for like a few hours, I was just, okay, well, someone will make it soon. And I just kept scrolling, liking posts, commenting, made a few of my own posts. Then I checked back, there was still no community. So I kept scrolling, kept posting, kept liking, kept commenting, no community, kept scrolling, kept liking, kept posting, no community. And eventually I was just like, okay, Mama didn't raise no apologies. And I decided if no one else is going to do it, screw it. So am I. I went and took the leap of faith and I made the community. Um, because I saw it was becoming so much more than just backlash. And there was a real strong movement here for people who, not just sequel fans, but people who just wanted Star Wars to take risks again, to go back to the storytelling that focused on not just the spectacle, but also the morals. A lot of people talk about how Andor was save Star Wars, and a lot of detractors for our campaign talk about like how they should just focus more on Andor. I think the movie does focus more on Andor because Andor focused on the characters and the very real struggles with morality, with doing the right thing, with standing up against authoritarianism and fascism, even at extreme cost, and the scale of how much was sacrificed for the rebellion to take hold, to take form, to be able to make it to the point that led to the destruction of the first Death Star that started this entire franchise. Like that kind of storytelling is the kind of storytelling that this movie was going to have. And I think that you don't need to have one or the other. We can have both because they both serve the same purpose. Um, I wasn't expecting much to come out of this community being made. Given that I was relatively new to Tumblr and I had no real friends outside of my cousin, who was also on there. But I got reached out to and invited to the Discord server, which I had no idea existed, and everything changed. And I don't regret a single thing because that moment just fundamentally altered not just the course of this entire this entire relationship I have with the fandom, but also just I think the course of my life.
In what way?
Well, for the first time in my life, I am working with people and doing something that, even if it's for something as simple as a movie getting greenlit, these are people who are working from all over the world, from the Philippines, from Europe and France and England and Germany and Sweden, to people in Latin America, to people in the United States, to people in Canada, to people in Australia. This is so much more than anything I'd ever been a part of at the time. And I really, this has fundamentally altered the course of my life because of how much stuff I think I'm learning from just being a part of it that I think I'm going to be taking with me for the rest of my life, to my job, to how I handle my relationships with people, to just purely and simply how I think how much power people as a collective can hold. Because it's only been like less than a month, but we have done so much. There's been a plane, there've been billboards, a missing posters campaign. We had our Coyote v. Hack Me moment outside of Burbank, and all of that was stuff I helped participate in, that I helped spread awareness of, and that's something I think I'm never going to forget.
Absolutely. And there's one fundraiser in existence. Another one is expected to come online very soon,
Hmm.
to show that we're also socially minded, to show that it's not just about Star Wars. It's not just about making a movie. It's also about how fans of Star Wars are, as you said, learning from the messages in the films and therefore trying to do good works, in the real world where we all exist every day. So you found a community. What keeps you in this community of hashtag Save Ben Solo fans?
Well, my desire to see this movie is really strong, so naturally I'm going to be drawn to this community and want to stick with it as long as possible. But the community has also been incredibly kind to me outside of just this desire for the movie to get made. It's extremely organized. I was shocked at how organized it was for something that was less than 2 weeks old at that time. And I recognized the plane, the missing posters, the petition. It was all connected. I was meeting the people who had done that in this server. This wasn't like usual decentralized fan outrage like what happened with the sequels when it came to that anger. This was an organized movement, not seeking to tear something down, but to actually make something. And that was that's something that is just your first time being a part of that. Oh, that's a fundamentally unique feeling. Um, and it made me want to stick with the community because I, I feel so strongly for this movie. And having made all these positive relationships, these friendships, these real friendships with these people, I want it all to be for something. I want us all to succeed.
But what were you expecting when you became a part of this community?
Well, I wasn't expecting to be anyone anywhere near as public as I was expecting. I was just the guy who made a Tumblr community. Um, I wasn't expecting anything of note to come from that. Then I learned, oh shoot, I'm now a social media booster because I was the person who made the first Tumblr community, which now has 33 members at the time. Actually, hold up. I think it was no, actually remember it just upped to 39 members the last time I checked. Um, I've also become a writer for the campaign. I've been working on social media, but also just trying to recently we've been thinking about doing a Substack, and I wanted to be a writer for that. We've been thinking about sending in freelance stories to news organizations to get them to report more on this. And people just started telling me how glad they were that I joined, how welcome I was, how what I contributed to the community, and I felt welcomed in a way that I wasn't used to feeling. Um, I was really in my element with people that I felt understood me in a way that very, very few people have. And this was a community of over 230 people who were all like me. There's something really, really healing about that.
And I'm going to say, in full transparency, it's not a community that doesn't have occasional bits of friction, but we work them
Oh yeah.
out, for folks who aren't on the Discord. We're
Mm-hmm.
not perfect. It is not a utopia, but we've
Definitely
agreed that we will talk things through and come to consensus on as many things as we can,
not.
because
Mm-hmm.
we have a nice, clear focus. I think that helps, right? We have a nice, clear
Mm-hmm.
focus. Get the hunt for Ben Solo made.
Mm-hmm.
So, in the past, Star Wars fans have been passionate about their own perspectives on the franchise. Tell me a little bit about how this community feels a little different to ones that you've seen before.
This community feels like it's the living refutation of this idea, this stereotype of how Star Wars fans are expected to behave and how they're expected to be seen. For the longest time, we've had bad actors and poor fan content, and even bots foster this image of the wider Star Wars community as a good old friend Obi-Wan Kenobi would say, a hive of scum and villainy, comparable to that of the most, pardon me, uh, that's comparable to that of the most toxic fandoms. The sequel hate movement definitely didn't help with that, but it's been there since the prequels with the bullying of the actor who played Jar Jar Binks, with the hatred for Jake Lloyd who played young Anakin. Like there's always all fandoms have their problems, but Star Wars always had that part of its fandom the most publicized, the most vocal. Like that was all people were allowed to see. But this organization is living proof that that is not what Star Wars's community is at its core. That is not what we are. In this community of over 230 people, and in this specific server of the campaign, but also the other people who are also a part of this campaign, because we don't own the Hunt for Ben Solo or the movement to save it. This is for everyone who wants to join in. And we have had our differences. We've had our moments of division, of disagreement, but we've handled it in a way that most people wouldn't think of when they think of Star Wars fans. We're not people who seek to tear each other down. We want to build each other up, and we want to build this franchise up because we love this franchise. And that's why we're doing everything we can to revive this movie, and why we're trying to do so with respect, with grace, with purpose, not trying to tear anyone down, not trying to say, oh, we're not trying to gatekeep the community or anything. We want this movie made, and we are organizing it so well in such a way that a lot of people are rationalizing it as some fabricated marketing scheme by Disney or by a bunch of really rabid fans. But That's not it. That's not what this movement is. Our movement is real. It's big. And to this community's benefit, I see this not only as a way to fix the image of what people think Star Wars fans are and how Star Wars is supposed to be treated with, it's also a way to heal the community because there's so much cynicism about the franchise at right now, where people just don't think anything is going to save the franchise. They think it's better off staying dead. They think that anyone who thinks otherwise, they feel they have the right to tear them down back to their level. But our movement won't break to that, and I think our movement is going to bring a lot of people who'd lost hope, and we're going to give them hope again. Show them this is not how Star Wars is, this is not how it should be, and things can be better. All it takes is action, and we can only succeed if we stand together.
And we've been given, a helpful direction for all of our energy and attention, right? Which is on this movie that is so close. I mean,
Mhm,
they were doing, I forget what they're called, but they were doing the production plans,
mhm.
before the whole thing got shut down. So,
They greenlit the
uh,
script. They just shut it down from Disney's executive. Thank you, Adam, by the way, for letting us know all of this and basically starting this movement with a single section of an interview that no one was expecting. Thank you for that, Adam.
exactly. So, Yeet, as you pointed out, this movement is for anyone and everyone who wants to see the hunt for Ben Solo. Tell us about
Mhm.
the commitments that you've made to support the movement's internet and social media presence. What led you to step into that work?
So to start with, my involvement started with the Tumblr community, which was made to help boost content about the fan campaign on the platform. That's still a pretty big accomplishment of mine that I'm proud of doing. And I've also helped to promote the PCRF fundraiser. I've boosted positive news articles and posts, joined the letter campaign, the email campaign, call campaign. There's a lot of campaigns. I've worked to make a collab series on the movement and the movie as well, between major Star Wars YouTubers. I've made the aforementioned cover song on my YouTube channel, but I chose to step into this kind of work for the movement due to my background as a theater kid, but also because I know my strengths. I'm an orator, I'm a writer, an organizer, and a performer. So stepping into those kinds of roles for the campaign, gather attention for it, and to demonstrate and explain why we want this movie made and the potential that it holds benefits the movement more than I would be if I were, say, an artist or a legal analyst. I'm not a lawyer. Um, and I want to make this movement succeed. So in order to do that, I have to hit it with the things that I know will benefit it the most if I'm the one doing it. So all the things that I know I'm good at are what I focus on in the campaign. And that should be the same for everyone who wants to join in. I'm not saying that can't do something that you're not necessarily like extremely skilled or talented at, but when you join the campaign, this isn't just you're not just the main character. You're part of a whole community that's so far than just this server that I'm a part of. It's just one part of a much wider movement. So in order to help us succeed, the best thing that anyone can do is to look into themselves, figure out what they know that they're good at, and how they can use that to help the campaign. That's the advice for anyone who wants to join.
I would add that includes smashing like buttons and reposting things and
Well,
consuming the content that people are creating because
oh,
all of those
that
hit counts are
that's a
very
given.
important.
Even just liking and commenting on a post does a lot more.
So, Yeet, what do you want people to know about the movement to hashtag save the hunt for Ben Solo?
Well, firstly, it's not an AstroTurf campaign. I've seen this brought up in a lot of comment sections by a lot of people. No, this is not a Disney marketing scheme. This is not something that is made and funded by people outside of fans and outside of Star Wars, the Star Wars fandom. And this is a grassroots campaign, pure and simple. I've said this before, but as someone who joined the Discord about 6 days after the initial interview and only a few days after the plane, Times Square billboards and the Missing Posters campaign caught attention from the news outlets. I went through the server. I went through everything and it checked out. This is this is not some place filled with Disney employees trying to figure out the best ways to make people think that people want this movie made. People want this movie made. We have people from all eras of Star Wars, fans from all around the globe. We have Hispanics, we have Filipinos, we have Swedes, we have the French, we have the British, we have the Germans, we have people from Australia, people from
Japan.
Japan of all places. Most people wouldn't even know this, but Japan has a massive Star Wars fandom. This movement is worldwide, and we all came together because we love this franchise, we love this character, and we want both to succeed. And everyone who is in this movement, whether they're in this server or not, wants this movie made because if it's made with Adam and Steven being given full creative control over it and being allowed to make it work, it will make sure that the franchise and the character of Ben Solo not only are redeemed in the eyes of the public and the eyes of the general audience, but they'll be redeemed in the eyes of the parts of the Star Wars fandom that have been so beaten down and so hopeless and so cynical lately that they'll start to feel hope and joy again and start to realize that this is not the end of Star Wars. Star Wars can always come back, just like how no matter how much people can try and snuff out freedom and justice and the desire to do good in the world, like the rebellion, like the Jedi, and like the Skywalkers, there is always going to be people who will fight back against the darkness that is selfishness, greed, and cynicism, and the envy of people who have hope. That's what Star Wars is about. That's what this movement is about. This campaign, it's not an astroturf because it is fundamentally built around what we have taken in from being Star Wars fans, whether you've watched it since 1977, whether you just joined recently.
And thank you for teaching me the term astroturf. I had never heard of the idea of an astroturf campaign. But of course,
Hmm.
astroturf, for those who don't understand, astroturf is, of course, fake grass. So the idea is it's
Hmm.
a fake campaign, fake grassroots. But no, none of us, we're all doing this on our own free time. None of us is going to get paycheck to do any of this work. That would be great.
Trust us.
Uh,
I'm a college student. I would like the paycheck if this was actually an AstroTurf campaign.
yes, that would be wonderful. But no, no such luck. It's all on our own goods, all out of our own goodness of heart. How about that?
Hmm.
All right. Tell us a little bit about some of the stereotypes that you have run into online, as because you spend a lot of time, kind of seeing what reactions you get.
So I have seen, unfortunately, a lot of people who I will just generally refer to as antis because this is not a strictly Reylo movement. There are a bunch of people who have all kinds of reasons to want Ben Solo brought back. So and but they are all anti of this movement. So naturally, I call them antis. Um, and a lot of them generally think the worst of us. They think we're toxic. They think we have this extremely parasocial relationship with Adam, with Star Wars. A lot of them say we're crazy and that we're not as numerous as we actually are, and that we're just so vocal that we pretend that we're numerous. And well, I will fully admit that every time I see it, I get upset because a lot of it is just extremely awful stuff that they tell about other people just who just want this movie to be made. I just feel sorry for most of them because they're extremely cynical and jaded after all the mishaps that Star Wars has had ever since The Last Jedi came out and people started to break apart as a result. Um, but trying to tear us down when we've only just begun, that's not something new. That's just how life is. There's always going to be people like that, regardless if you like Star Wars or not. But it's no reason to stop now. It's no reason for us not to succeed. And it's no reason for us to clap back and go just as low as these people. We have already proven them wrong. We have done what past fan campaigns, including the Snyder Cut movement, which is arguably one of the most successful fan campaigns of all time. We've done what some of them could have only dreamt of when they started in the span of less than a month. And if we succeed, it's not only our movement that gets to reap the benefits, the rewards. Renew the Acolyte. For those who don't know, the Acolyte is another canceled Star Wars property, a show on Disney Plus. Is a separate group, but is tightly connected with us. They helped us with stuff like creating the website, how to conduct the fan campaign. And if Disney, the House of Mouse, the top of the top, the most powerful entertainment company in the history of the planet, is forced to capitulate to fan pressure, especially for something as major as Star Wars, then all these other studios that didn't learn the lesson when Paramount listened with the Sonic movies, they'll follow Disney lead, especially if, not when, not if, but when the movie comes out and is successful, that's going to fundamentally alter the entertainment industry. The fans will be treated not just with respect, but they will be treated with being listened to, not just by the most vocal minority in a fandom, but all parts of a fandom. And if this happens, this can only benefit people of all fandoms that want to see storytellers and artists create these magnificent worlds that not only help us escape from the cruelties of our reality, but also teach us a lot about how we can handle that reality.
Absolutely. And it also makes me think that it might lead studios to adjust sort of how they assess their markets, because my biggest confusion in a lot of this has been around some of the money making decisions. Of course, Disney is a corporation that has shareholders that is responsible to turn a profit. And there are just so many people who really would like to see The Hunt for Ben Solo, a Steven Soderbergh movie. And of course, Ben Solo is played by Adam Driver. So there's um, a likely audience, to start with. And so I wonder, how did Disney take temperature? Did they even take the temperature of the
I
studio?
honestly don't think they took the temperature, especially considering that this wasn't going to be an extremely big budget movie. Adam and Steven already told that they were going to go more Empire Strikes Back with it. And Soderbergh never goes over budget on a lot of his movies. He's someone who can do a lot with a little, and that's clearly his preference, his style. So that's even more baffling because even if this movie somehow flopped, which it definitely wouldn't, it would it doesn't make sense to cancel it, especially after paying $3 million to the scriptwriter alone. Like that should already be an indication that this movie should be made if just to cover costs that were made in the making of it. I genuinely think that they are not as in touch with their audience as they should be, and that hurts the businesses more than it helps them. And this campaign succeeding will not just help the fandom, it'll also help these businesses get back into business because you can only make money and benefit when you listen to the fandom and when you make them happy.
Right, because we're the ones who are going to buy movie tickets and merch.
And we're the ones who are going to make sure other people buy movie tickets and merch.
Mhm. So, in addition to planning activities and events, what else do you enjoy contributing to the hashtag Save the Hunt for Ben Solo movement?
So I enjoy the humor. We've got a lot of witty people in the Discord, and they're all hilarious. And I like engaging with them, making jokes. Some of them are inside jokes, but a lot of them are also just really clever humor. I check the meme channel every day to see what someone has posted because a lot of the time it's genuinely funny. And no hyperbole, almost every time I wind up dying of laughter. No, that might just be because I really like the sense of humor that people have in the server. Um, I also enjoy having so many people at different perspectives, but also meeting a lot of people who can share my perspective because I'm not the only person. in the server who's on the spectrum and has ADHD, so I can relate to a lot of the people in the movement, and we can talk about our experiences and our struggles. Um, it helps me feel a lot less alone, especially when I'm able to share stuff about my experiences as a kid with Asperger's and ADHD who had to deal with a lot of the stigma surrounding that growing up, especially in school. Meeting a lot of these people, some of whom are older than me, some of whom are my same age, some of whom have vastly different backgrounds than me outside of it. It's very comforting. And finally, I enjoy the feeling of just doing something succeeding. This campaign has had so much success in only its first month. We've raised $12,300 for the PCRF. We flown a plane, bought out billboards, did email, letter, and call campaigns. We've successfully bought and promoted merch from Friday Apparel. We've gotten the attention of not just major entertainment news organizations, but a few major regular news organizations like Newsweek. We've even got the attention of people like Ryan Johnson and Daniel Craig, who both voiced their support for the movie in an interview recently. Ryan Johnson actually did another interview with Collider, explicitly endorsing our movement. His exact words: "Take our money."
Take
It
my
doesn't get
money.
much more clear than that.
Yeah. If Ryan Johnson wants to see it, come on, let's go.
Like, and you can dislike him for making The Last Jedi, but he very clearly likes Star Wars. Like, he really does enjoy this, and he enjoyed working with Adam. You can't take that away from him. He definitely loved Adam in The Last Jedi. Uh, Daniel Craig as well also worked with Adam and Soderbergh as well and Logan Lucky. So I genuinely think that a lot of the movement is going to find a lot of success. And we are going to get this movie made. And just having that feeling of we're on the right track, that alone is something worth being a part of, and it's something I like to contribute. I always love to remind people we have we it took the Snyder movement 2 to 3 years to get an article about them from IGN. At least when I looked on the internet, it took us less than 3 weeks.
Yeet. Is there anything that you would like the world to know or to tell Disney about the movement to get the Hunt for Ben Solo greenlit?
So I have one message for the world and one for Disney, and I'm going to start with the world. So for the world, I'd like them to know that this movement, this is what Star Wars is at its core. Our fandom, for all the issues it has, at our fundamental core, is kind, loving, respectful, and we have a deep and passionate love for not only our franchise, but for helping those in need, like our franchise's heroes practice. To believe in the best of people, even if they don't believe it themselves, of having hope for a better tomorrow and being willing to fight for it, to sacrifice for it, even when it seems impossible, even against a group that feels so overwhelming and so powerful that it's so easy to feel hopeless. That is what Star Wars is about. In the same manner that people will see a property like One Piece and will take away from it to to expend yourself to help other people achieve freedom from oppression. Star Wars is about all about uh, ensuring that everyone and everyone around you, even the people who've tried to hurt you, who have tried to tear you down, and who have failed you, everyone deserves a better tomorrow, and we should all fight to make sure that everyone around us has a better life and lives in a better world. That is what Star Wars is about.
Here, here.
As for Disney, I'd like for them to know we don't hate you or upset with you. Yes. Disappointed? Absolutely. You threw away an opportunity to not just make yourself a bunch of money, but to fix your image in the eyes of a lot of the fandoms that you have disappointed extensively over the past. But we don't want you to fail. This entire movement is based upon the fact that we want you and we want Star Wars to succeed, not just because it makes us happy, but because it means that you will succeed and continue making good movies and making good stories and touching people to their very core in ways that you have done so many times. This is definitely not going to be the end for you. You have already gone through your moments of creative struggles and ruts, but this is an opportunity for you to turn that around right now. We want this movie greenlit because it is one of the only ways to not just fix Star Wars, but to make other fandoms know you can listen to them and you can deliver upon what you promised them. The fans want it. Adam clearly wanted it. Steven wants it. Burns wants it. Even Ryan wants it. Even Kathleen Kennedy. Even Dave Filoni. We want this to succeed because it would show us what we really want you to show us, that you care, that you are willing to take risks, even at the potential expense of yourself, to deliver to us what we crave from the stories that you have told, going all the way back to the 90s with stuff like The Lion King, with The Little Mermaid in 89, with Beauty and the Beast. We want you to we want to feel that sense of magic that you gave us again, and to show the world that the power of Disney and what makes Star Wars have so much potential under your umbrella is this shared belief in the magic of imagination and the power of fiction to make the real world a better, more magical place. There is no better time right now to make the world remember that than right now, right here, with this movie and the people who want to make it. Ben represents the troubled youth of the generation, and he also represents the hope that despite all of our mistakes we have made, and despite our pasts, there is a light waiting at the end of the tunnel for us if we strive to redeem ourselves, to atone for our sins, and to be better. In a world where there is so much hatred and vitriol, and people are pretending like empathy and compassion is this sickness in civilization that should be eradicated. This is a movie that needs to be made. Ben Solo needs to be brought back. He needs to live and he needs to atone because he needs to show this generation and the past generations that it is possible for things to get better, that it is possible for you to get better, and also that no matter how much hatred and darkness may feel overwhelming at times, especially right now, the Revenge of the Sith novelization put it best. A single candle is all it takes to push back darkness. And love, redemption, and the inherent goodness that comes from that is more than a candle. Love can ignite the stars. And right now, that is what you have the opportunity to do. And right now, the choice is yours. We are offering you an open hand. It is your choice whether to take it.
Thanks for that, Yeet. I mean, Bob Iger himself recently said that Disney wants to get back to telling important stories. And what more important story is there than the one you've just described? Well, Yeet, I want to thank you so much for joining me today and speaking with us. I think it's really important that folks get to know the people behind the scenes who are trying to create wonderful content for you to, again, remember to like, share, comment on, so that the folks who have the power to make the Hunt for Ben Solo can see that there is genuine, sincere, and broad interest all over the world in seeing this movie. And now you have a sense for who some of us are. Please join us. Please share it,
Please.
and we'll look forward to seeing you around.
And subscribe to Jen. She is amazing.
Thanks.
You're not alone.
Neither are you. That's funny. We'll definitely put that in the bloopers. Okay.